Impactful Parents. Welcome. And today I have on Chef Kibby, who today we're going to talk about how we can use cooperative cooking to help our kids with their mental health and build resiliency.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great privilege to be here.
I'm really excited to get into how we're going to use cooking to help our kids with their mental health and build resiliency. So many of my parents in my audience are looking for ways to help their kiddos adjust to the changes that we've all had in 2020. So what is it about cooking that can help moms and dads provide their little ones with the emotional support that they need in these crazy times we're in?
I could not agree with you more. 2020 has been such a change for all of us, and myself included. And the one thing that I've come away from all of this learning is how blessed I am, not just to be a chef, because we all have to eat. And so being able to cook is a really helpful tool to have, a really helpful skill set to have, especially in a time like this when, places are running out of toilet paper and all sorts of other commodities and food items for that matter, and not having access to the same luxuries that we had before of being able to go out to eat and go to restaurants, and maybe even just limiting the amount of time that we're spending outside the house. All that to say, being able to cook has been really helpful for me during this time. But more than that, what's really been impactful for me, as you mentioned, I am a biological foster and adoptive dad, and being able to cook, not just for my family, but with my family, with my kiddos, has taught me what cooking can be as not just a way of building health, not just a way of saving money, which it can do all of those things and more, but it can be such a helpful way for us to build strong attachments and relationships to our kiddos. And one of the ways that we can build those strong attachments and relationships is through sharing time in the kitchen with them. I've come to see in my kiddos, in those interactions and those experiences, that inviting them into the kitchen with me communicates things that words can't. It shows them that I value them, that I notice them, that they're important to me, that I value having time with them. And even more than that, once I start giving them tasks to do in the kitchen, even the smallest things, it communicates trust, and it communicates that I have faith in them to be able to do amazing things. And that to me is the foundation of building resilience into our young people. And just the thought that I already have that in my life, and that through this platform that we have of the interwebs, that I could share that message with other people, including your audience right now, is such a tremendous blessing to me. And it is my sincere hope that I can not only kind of evangelize and advocate for this activity, but also to give parents like the ones who are watching us right now the tools and the skills and the techniques and the resources that they need to implement this kind of strategy in their families.
I love that you really are looking at the unsaid, the untalked about communication that we have with our kids every single day by our actions. And I think that that's a lot of parents, we forget that. We forget that those unsaid words that we're communicating to our kids on a daily basis, just by how we're treating them, things that we say that they can do and can't do. There's so much underlying language happening in that. So my next question to you is, okay, let's say I have a child who's really having a hard time with some sadness, and they just, they're disappointed all the time. They feel like they can't do things right. How is cooking going to help them?
It's really funny that you mentioned that, because I actually was having a discussion recently with a parent, a mom of two children, both of them kind of preteen, middle school to high school age. And it's one of the families that's taking part in my first online course. I created a course virtually online called Knife Skills for Busy Families. And as the name would suggest, it is a knife skills course, but it's built for busy families so that they can learn while they're in the process of cooking and eating together. So every week, this family and others who are participating in it are watching a short set of quick videos, and then are immediately putting those skills into practice in a recipe and a meal that I've provided to them, the recipe that utilizes the skills that they just learned as a family. So it's been working out really well for them, and I hope many in your audience will look into that as an option for them. But I was talking to one of the families that were participating in this course, and we were talking about this idea of disappointment, because let's face it, we've all faced some amount of disappointment in 2020. It's been a time of radical shift in our normalcy, in our routine. Our patterns have been disrupted, and that can be a very disappointing thing. And one of the interesting things that I've come to realize is that in order to prepare our young people to deal with disappointment, one of the best things we can do is allow ourselves to be vulnerable in front of our kids and let them see us fail, if that makes sense. They're not going to see us necessarily fail at work or at the gym or when we're out with other adults, but they can see us fail or experience disappointment in the kitchen. I mean, how many of you, and you yourself as well, have not experienced some level of disappointment in the kitchen, whether
Oh,
it's...
I fail in the kitchen nearly every
It's bound to happen. It still happens to me. I'm not immune to this. Even though I'm a professional chef and a culinary instructor and all those things, I still experience disappointments and frustrations in the kitchen. That's just a part of life. And what better way for us to teach our kids how to deal with disappointment than for us to model to them, for us to allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to face disappointment in front of them and to show them how to deal with it, to show them how to just kind of let it roll off. Or sometimes I do get a little frustrated and they see that. And I'm trying not to tear up when I think about it, because those are times when they show empathy toward me. Mm-hmm. in my frustration, and how refreshing that is to experience empathy from them, and to know that that's training them to have empathy for others outside of the home, their peers, their friends, eventually their coworkers.
And the bottom line of what you're saying, that I'm just going to point out to my audience, is that it's about the process. It's about the process of spending time with your child, but the process of cooking and creating something together. And it's not about whether or not the food came out amazing and tasty and everybody loved it. It's actually, what you're speaking of is the process of, even maybe it came out horribly, and that's okay. We gave it a shot. We did this together, and life goes on, and like learning to deal with the frustrations and spending that quality time together. And I feel like right now, this is an amazing program, because right now we're looking for things as parents inside our house. What can we do with our kids? What's something new? We're all kind of a little bored. We spent months together now. Mm-hmm. The board games are starting to fizzle out. Like, there's only so many walks we can take. I mean, we are kind of pulling out our hair. I mean, me included. I got 4 kids at home, and some days are definitely a lot more difficult than others when it comes to what are we going to do today. And I just love this idea of going into the kitchen and cooking with my kids as a process, not as an end result. Now, the end result's great. I mean, that's obviously wonderful if we can make something tasty, because cooking is not my thing. Anybody who knows me, who's watching this, knows that cooking is not my thing. I love food. I love eating food, but making it has never been something I've been good at. So that brings me to my next question for you, is that cooking can be really intimidating for parents like me who, we're just not all that great at cooks, and a little cooking challenge there. And so it could be a really intimidating process. So what suggestions do you have for us, parents like me, just to get started?
There are simple things that you can do. And a lot of people have already begun to take advantage of things like meal kits. Can be very, very helpful, because it takes a little bit of the pressure off of trying to find a recipe, trying to source all the ingredients. That can be a very helpful thing to do. Don't put too much pressure on yourself about how creative or how fancy or elaborate your cooking has to be in order to get the benefit out of this time. The simplest recipes can be the best place to start as far as getting you and your kiddos acclimated to spending time in the kitchen.
I love it. Thank you. And so tell me, if anybody wants to get a hold of you and check out your programs, tell us a little bit about the age range of kids that your programs are ideal for, and then how we can get a hold of you.
Absolutely. You can find me everywhere on the interwebs at Cookin' with Kibby. That's Cookin' with Kibby. I had to leave off the G because it was too many letters for Twitter. True story. So Cookin' with Kibby, the website is cookinwithkibby.com. And you can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I do have a podcast as well, the Cookin' with Kibby podcast. You can find on Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify. And then you'll find the information about my course, Knife Skills for Busy Families, and other resources through my website and through my social media channels.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate all your tips and advice. And I just love the idea of cooking with my kids in the kitchen to help them as a connection. It's amazing. Thank you for being on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.